Greetings, I'm Bob. There's a joke that goes around online. You say, I like pancakes, and someone fires back, why do you hate waffles? You never mention waffles, yet somehow you're now defending a position you never took. It's a meme of sorts, but there is a kernel of truth there, so let's dig it out together, shall we? Bold statement incoming. Most human communication is unconscious. I don't mean that as a condescending insult, and I'm not talking about nonverbal gesticulation. I mean this descriptively. When we are in a conversation, words can do one of two things. Either they point outward at a given definition, something stable and ideally answerable to mind-independent reality, or they simply feed the standing frame that the speaker is perceiving through. That said, it's time to define our terms. What do I mean by frame? By frame, I mean a unit that acts as a microcosm of your worldview, whereas the amalgam of metaphysics is the macrocosm. Back to the two ways words are used in conversation concerning pointing to definitions or to frames. The second use tends to dominate, and it does so most whenever a conversation gets anywhere near the load-bearing and unexamined pieces of a person's picture of the world. The vast majority of people don't have a coherent metaphysics, actively decided upon through rigorous logic. Instead, their worldviews are usually built on institutional and cultural vibes, hence the need to create this concept in the first place. As a result, there are probably multiple metaphysical concepts layered on top of one another, some even contradicting each other. For example, one may think that they believe in objective reality, but also think that morality is subjective. This is a logical contradiction, as morality is part of the set of reality and, as such, cannot be both subjective and objective, hence a contradiction. But if examined, one can hold many overlapping concepts. Yet the concepts that are most important are the ones that tie into morality from the perspective of the individual. That's a core metaphysic, be it logical or illogical. Near that core, a word carries almost no standard definition behind it. It functions purely as a token. You may have thought that you were inherently different from a large language model, but on the subjects that matter most, the ones knotted up with who you are, you do the exact same thing. You run on tokens. The word is held by positing, declaring itself as evidently true, rather than by correspondence to reality. And it refers to absolutely nothing outside of the frame when you demand a definition, because a definition was never what the word was doing. I'll give you an example. Brace yourself. Trump. Did you hear that word just now? Parse it calmly as a card suit or a brass instrument and go on about your day? Or did an entire universe instantly summon itself? Favorable, unfavorable, or somewhere in between? I didn't need to give you context. Politics hasn't even been mentioned. One word and the frame summoned itself. What you are seeing in action is what I call Framespeak. With that said, a mind perceives through its active frame. It takes the frame as neutral, true, good, and coincident with reality itself. So when a contradicting input hits that register, the frame immediately indexes it as false and bad, because few perceive themselves as bad actors, and if one is a good person, then one holds good person views. If someone opposes that view, that must mean the person opposing such is bad as well, since we associate our identity with our belief systems. In other words, the cheapest way to fix that internal contradiction is to skip the definition entirely and issue a verdict where a logical argument should have been. Let's go check out some non-controversial examples of Framespeak in the wild. Biological sex in humans is binary. 2 gamete types exist. The organism is structurally organized around the production of sperm or egg. There is no spegg. If you state this biological fact in a conversation where the opposing frame has presupposed their frame as both reality and morality itself, watch what happens. The response will completely bypass the gamete concept. It won't touch it. Instead, it addresses you as a moral agent. Transphobic, harmful. You want to erase trans people. Yes, intersex conditions are real, but they are developmental anomalies within a binary system, not evidence of a third category. A missing limb does not constitute a new class of limb. But the frame does not engage this distinction because the distinction is not what the frame is processing. It is processing a perceived attack on self. Let's move to the next example. When does life begin? The biological claim here is straightforward. At fertilization, a genetically distinct human organism is present. New genetic life, identifiable as such by any laboratory on Earth. Now, if you state this to someone holding a pro-abortion position, you might receive an actual argument. The claim is met as a premise. Yes, new genetic life is present, but it is not a person because it isn't born yet, and as such, it can be terminated without moral consequence. That is a roughly classical argument, albeit a flawed one. So flawed because a parasite is, by definition, a different species than its host, whereas a female has organs specifically to facilitate the growth of distinct life. But more often, what you get is Framespeak. You just want to control women's bodies. You're imposing your religion. You hate women. The genetic fact is never addressed. The frame literally reinterprets your words to mean something compatible with its own survival. The distinction here is between an argument, defined as a coherent series of reasons or statements or facts intended to support or establish a specific point of view, and Framespeak, the reflexive summoning of a frame that must then be defended. The former is an evaluation of the topic of discussion. The other issues a morally charged label from the frame being defended, presenting its own internal values as the objective measure of reality itself. This leaves us in an epistemic architectural reality, the no outside. 2 frames in contact cannot actually reach each other by words or traditional arguments. Meaning is fixed entirely inside each frame, and it is instantly refixed upon receipt. Your words do not arrive in the mind of the other person holding the frame bearing their original meaning. Your words are distorted by their frame and vice versa. There is no outside, just 2 frames bumping into each other, never the twain shall meet. Nor is there a neutral, shared logic standing outside both frames to compel an agreement across the divide, because logic itself is an aspect of your underlying metaphysics, aka what you think reality is. You can spend years defeating an opponent's labels one by one, but it won't matter. Moving the defense from label to label leaves the frame perfectly intact. The frame has no point of ingress. So, how do you breach such a frame? You do it with one specific operation, the demand for a standard definition. You stop offering inferences, you stop sending words to be chewed up by their frame defense. Instead, you turn toward the only standard that stands outside every frame, mind-independent reality. You ask them to reproduce their argument using standard definitions, as that is closer to objective reality. If their core belief is held by correspondence to reality, they can step outside, look at the standard, and examine the claim. But if their core is held by positing, if the word was only ever a token referring to another word in their frame, never reaching objective reality at all, then the demand returns absolutely nothing but a recursive loop that cannot be broken. And if they honestly register that empty return, the spell might break. For the first time, they might realize that what they thought was just the way the world is actually just a position, a single stance among many alternatives. But here's the final catch, the structural law of the exchange. You can only press this demand if you hold your own side by correspondence. If you are holding your side by positing, you're using your own unexamined tokens and mirrors. You have no outside standard to appeal to. You cannot carry an outside standard into the exchange. You're just throwing a competing label across the divide, matching the no outside on your side with the no outside of theirs. We think we're trading arguments, but most of the time we're just trading reflections. So, the next time a simple truth comes flying back at you as a moral verdict, don't reach for a sharper argument. Stop arguing with the reflection. Ask what stands behind that mirror out there in reality where neither of you can move it, and watch whether there is anything outside at all.